All right, welcome everyone to another session of a virtual Global Growth Marketing Summit brought to you by Mobile Monkey and partners. I'm super excited for the panel today. It's our second panel of the day. And today we will be covering everything you need to know about B2B growth marketing, demand generation, lead generation. That's the name of the event, the lead generation strategies for 2019. And today we have folks here at the panel who've been doing lead generation, demand generation, pretty much for the most of their professional career. And we'll also have interactive discussion. So if you have a good question, feel free to type it either in the chat or ask a question by pressing the big orange button located underneath the screen. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. And I'm super excited for the panel today, and we'll start with the introduction. Let's start with you, Joyce.
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone. So my name is Joyce. I am currently at DocuSign, responsible for our inbound marketing campaigns here. Most of my experience has been within the industry of B2B and SaaS. So prior to DocuSign, I was at a company called Box. And at Box, I was responsible for demand generation, also campaigns there. And then for a short while after that, switched kind of my focus to partner marketing and really how do we, do co-marketing with channel partners and different types of integration partners. So that was fairly interesting. But yeah, so I've been probably in the industry for 10 plus years. And again, majority of it is really just centered around integrated marketing, demand generation, lead generation. So I'm really excited to be here today and talk to you guys about, growth marketing and what that is.
Awesome. Amelia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amelia Barra. I'm the Director of Marketing here at SaaStr. We are a global community of founders, builders, investors, leaders, and we come together each year in San Francisco and around the globe for an awesome 3-day event. So I'm in charge of growing our amazing community and getting more people in it and interacting in it. Prior to SaaStr, I was at a few startups. So I was at Everstring and BrightFunnel, where I worked on predictive marketing and multi-touch attribution. So I always have a data lens in anything that I do around marketing. And then in a very, very past life, I lived in LA and did B2C marketing for makeup brands. So I've done the full gambit over my 8 years with a big passion for social, of course, because that was my backbone when I started in marketing. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Amelia. All right, Connor, take it away.
Thanks. So I'm Connor Lee. I'm the founder and CEO of HipLead and Sona. And I started out my career, actually, interestingly enough, working for the now newly elected Governor Gavin Newsom in politics. And then eventually moved into to running political campaigns and moving into the tech field. And I founded a startup that was in Y Combinator in 2011. And then with HipLead and Sona for the past 5 years, we've worked with over now 300 different SaaS companies to basically help them run and scale their outbound. So I focus on helping companies, sales teams and marketing teams grow via outbound sales.
Very cool. Awesome. So thanks everyone for joining us today again. And we'll start with some foundations. We'll start with more general questions. I know that some of the attendees here are fairly new to growth marketing in general. So I would love to get our panelists to define what growth marketing means for them and how is it different specifically for B2B and B2C. Let's start with Joyce.
Sure. So I think, growth marketing consists of a lot of things. I think when you're looking at it from, B2C, kind of the way that we've described it at DocuSign and how I've seen it in the past is really, it's very transactional and simplistic. It's a direct buy. So a lot of it is focused around paid search and some of those, SEO, content marketing. How do we get leads to come to us? And how do we do it at capacity and, or velocity? So, I think B2C it's really exciting, very different audience, but these people are interested in you. So toggle up a lot of those levers and just try to optimize as best you can in order to get that growth that you want to see. And then, for B2B, I think it's a little bit more complicated, right? You have a little bit more in terms of buyers and influencers in the market. So again, it's similar programs, similar tactics, but maybe looking at them and positioning them a little bit differently in terms of what you can get for inbound. I'll let the rest of the panel kind of expand on that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you've said. I think one of the biggest differences I've seen in how a B2B organization versus a B2C org tackles it is really what a B2C org tries to do is recreate the magic of SaaS, right? They want to get as much recurring revenue as possible. Like, how many customers and buyers can we get to come back every day? How can we re-engage them? You see these sort of consumer examples all the time, right? Like if you go to Sephora or Target, whatever, and you've abandoned your cart online, they retarget you because they want you to be that recurring revenue and customer and brand that they trust and that you go to. So it's kind of crazy that, B2C is stealing from SaaS and SaaS is stealing from B2C. It's like this whole hodgepodge of growth marketing nowadays.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've done a lot more B2B than B2C myself, and from the I think the one thing that defines growth marketing to me is a focus on analytics and numbers. So it's not just kind of throwing your stuff out there. It's not it's less branding focused oftentimes, but it's a really focus on numbers and which lends itself well to SaaS and those other industries. On the B2B side, where I focus is I see B2B growth marketing. I think oftentimes because of the complexity and the number of different roles and players involves, I think, a lot of more pre-segmentation and sort of being proactive in what you're going to do, setting out more planning. Not that it doesn't happen in B2C, but I think oftentimes if they don't do that in B2B, you fall on your face. So.
Great. And in growth marketing, there are a couple of themes that I heard right now that I would like to take that conversation towards to. But one of the things we talk about funnel quite a bit in growth marketing in general. How do you feel, or maybe it's not, maybe it's the same. How do you feel B2C, traditional B2C funnel is different from B2B funnel? When we talk about user acquisition being on very top, then activation, then what is next? Engagement, retention. So we talk about that funnel. There are some different variations of it when we talk about revenue. But what do you think about B2B funnel? How do you visualize it? Let's start with you, Joyce.
Yeah, I think, again, it's just a little bit more complex. You have the different stages of the funnel and you're tracking, you're looking at it from every angle. It's not just the hand raisers for responses that you would generally get in terms of engaged, or potentially active leads. It's more of a, okay, great, they're engaged at the very top, but how do we continue to drive them down? What are the different types of tactics we should look at to kind of get our conversion numbers up? Because as Connor mentioned, a lot of growth marketing, especially on the B2B side, is very metrics and data focused. So, our end goal for this funnel is essentially to get them to close a win and also make a purchase. And I think, again, just moving through that funnel takes a little bit more time. There's a little bit more complexity. You're looking at different tactics and, how to execute them a little bit differently for things like retargeting. And so a lot of it is just that careful orchestration of how do you make that all work? How are you tracking the numbers and optimizing where you can at each stage? And then also, that relationship and handoff with sales is also a little bit more crucial in the B2B phase as well. Because you're looking at the full funnel rather than just marketing taking the first half and sales kind of, carrying through the later half. Is how we work together for that entire funnel.
Great. Amelia, anything to add to it?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think where a lot of marketers go wrong or sort of neglect the funnel is like, we all think it stops after a closed won deal, right? Like we've gotten the customer, they're in, great. And I think one of the theories I've seen lately about the funnel from Brian Halligan at HubSpot is like he calls it more of a flywheel, so that it's sales marketing. And then after that closed won deal, they become a customer. And that's when the real marketing starts, right? Like that's really where the meat of the marketing should be, because these customers can be your biggest advocates. They can help you win more deals in less time, easier. They can speed up your deal acceleration and like sales cycles. So I think for me, customer marketing is something that I've done in the past and I've personally tackled, and it's something that is, I think, overlooked too often, because your customers are really, that's your bread and butter. Like those are your money makers, and they're your best, stories. And I think it's a miss when people don't like continue along and nurture those relationships like we do. Like speaking of SaaS and events, like we do so many events just to get new leads, and we often forget like we need to go to events and meet our actual customers and get on a plane and just talk to them.
Yeah, just to build on what you said, I can resonate to it. We actually, our first year, all of our sponsors from the first year that we recruited for the Growth Marketing Conference, they actually canceled because our sales team was focusing on closing that deal and basically just going to the next one. And now we're just realizing that building relationships with customers, client success management, customer success is much more important than actually closing that initial deal. So I think it's a really good way to take our conversation to. So maybe Connor, you can talk a little bit about the customer marketing that you're doing at HipLead, or maybe some successful case study that you've seen from some of your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So at HipLead, we help companies run and scale their own outbound approach, and so a lot of what we do, and I think it's a practice that I think can help everyone, regardless of what stage they are as a growth marketer in their career and in their organization, is what we try to do is understand the landscape, really who are the different audiences they've already engaged with, and do as much as we can to sort of pre-segment those. And if you have data in your system, if you have metrics, to try to pull those out and really first focus on audiences that they're going to be your best audiences. So always start with segmentation first, and focus on getting wins where you can in that audience. Oftentimes until that audience is diminished if it's B2B. But one really interesting case study that we've done is working with a company that has that they sell to office managers, and I can't name the organization. You guys have probably heard of it. They sell to office managers across the United States, and we help them to run cold outbound email campaigns. And one of the really interesting things that we've noticed is that when you're engaging with folks, with clients or with prospects, really the biggest piece is grabbing their attention and understanding them around a pain point. And so we always try to focus on for that specific audience, for that vertical, what is the pain that they're having? You don't necessarily, when you first engage them, you don't have to position yourself as explain everything you do, and it's really just naming that pain and understanding that audience's pain, then starts engagement with your brand, with the sales team, with everyone else. And so I think the biggest takeaway that if I was to tell someone who's getting into growth marketing would be, sit down, look at the data if you have it all. If not, talk to as many people you can and talk about what are the pains that they're having in this area that your problem is, that your solution, your SaaS product or consulting product is going to try to solve.
Great. And before we move to Joyce here, I'm just curious. So do you have a specific person in your organization sort of that focused on identifying pains, or is it you as a founder, or is it the entire team? So how do you sort of, let's say you just focused on the customer marketing right now at this point, who is doing it within your organization, Connor?
So yeah, we have account managers that kind of manage the relationship. So right when a new client comes on board, there's a handoff process. I think it's really one of the most important parts of the actual sales process. So at the close, if it's a B2B client, they're paying you, not a small sum of money usually, and if there's a sales rep involved. And so what you need to do is during that handoff, as soon as the deal is closed, you need to basically push the ball forward and initiate a plan and steps in place. And it's almost like you're a project manager in a sense, where you're like, great guys, like we both agreed, you've agreed to pay us, we've agreed on this plan. Now here are the steps to get this plan done. And then the account manager's job in my experience, is to get everyone to buy into what you're going to agree to do. Whether that's if it's a consulting engagement or if it's software or something else, you're going to agree on what your shared goals are. And so, when it comes to understanding if they're successful in the future and helping them be successful, you're on the same playing field. And I think that's really the biggest thing that when we were starting out our business that changed it was sort of laying out a plan for every client almost in advance of close. You almost start that plan, and that helps the close too, because then they can see, like, all right, what value you're going to add when we do close. You prove that you have the capability to finish it, and so and then the handoff from the sales rep to the account manager needs to be very, very, very seamless. That's kind of the key part.
Excellent. Great. Joyce, any thoughts? Obviously, there's a different business model for Box and DocuSign, but we would love to hear some case studies or cases of customer marketing from you.
Yeah, well, before I get into it, I was going to add, I mean, not too different, but I think something, a best practice and something that, I've seen in my past experiences and just other companies kind of fall victim to, is the idea that, when you're small and you're trying to get your product out and you're trying to get people to understand what your company does, you sort of ignore the fact of trying to really hone in on who your audience is and who that persona is, because you're just trying to get out there and run as quickly as possible. And I think to, what Connor was mentioning, like segmenting, knowing your audience, like building the message, like doing that all up front really does lead to a company's success, because, you can run fast when you're small, but as you continue to grow and you scale, if you don't have those definitions and you don't have a clear path and you don't have somebody really focusing on, every step of the way, like who is our target audience and what is that message, you're going to be faced with that challenge later on down the road, and it makes it 10 times more difficult to figure that out, because now you really do have to focus in and start and rebuild, potentially resourcing, have teams come in. There's a set of like change behavior that comes into place, because some people just really aren't thinking about that, or they're now all siloed and thinking that each one of the places that they're focusing on are particular audiences and messages and personas that resonate. So I think it's just to add to what Connor said, like it's super important, and it's something that, we're trying to do here at DocuSign too. How do we get better at it, and how do we get better at targeting and knowing who we're talking to, so we can grow quickly. Yeah. And then, I'm happy to just answer quickly for customer marketing too. And then, if Amelia has anything to add, but really it's a quick statement, because I think it's something that we're still trying to perfect here at DocuSign. We've kind of, we grew pretty quickly, and we grew quickly fairly well. And now as we round out the team, there's actually conversations around like, we should probably look at the tail end of this customer or buyer's journey, and that piece is customer marketing. And now what do we do there? So stay tuned. Maybe next year I'll have something to share.
Yeah, I do think this is an instance where B2B can learn from B2C. Like, this is something that brands do well, and so well publicly, right? Like, if you go on Instagram these days and you scroll through, and if you follow anyone who's anyone these days on the gram, they're always going to like these customer appreciation dinners, events, like exclusive things for, top influencers, customers, whatever. And I think it's something that SaaS doesn't do enough. Like, this is something that I sort of brought over to my startups that I've worked for, and even at SaaStr we do it here as well, because it's something that Jason really believes in, is meeting your customers and talking to them. Again, it harps on that, but I think, doing more of events and like just interactions and experiences for your customers that they're going to appreciate that much more, like that just gets them so fired up to talk about your brand. Like, you don't have to pay these people, you just give them a cool experience and they're fired up and they will spread the word for you.
Great, and we definitely we will talk about event marketing and events in just a few minutes. But I would like to take a question from the audience. So I'm believing somebody who just starting out have a difficulty finding his target audience, or how do I position myself? A question from Peter, rightly, or is there something I need to do, because this is the first step for me to implement all the lessons that he's learning. So what are the key lessons from somebody who's starting out, whether it's early stage founder, maybe an agency owner to define the target audience?
Yeah, I'm happy to give it a quick start because I know I brought that topic up. So I think the first thing to think about is oftentimes, if you're really early stage, your first customers are going to be your friends, friends, family, people and the reason why you're building something is because either you had an itch to scratch or someone else had a itch they needed scratching but couldn't quite reach it. And so I tend to think about, take that model of that individual, whether it's the problem you have as a user or a model, and try to model out and say, like, all right, well, what fits this and what doesn't fit this, and then try to, in a way, do pattern matching. I think this applies to consumer or B2B, is really like kind of build a model out in your mind and try to really say, this matches it and this doesn't match. Maybe you'll be wrong in some places, but and try to apply that as you talk to other people, as people land on your website, as you engage with individuals. Try to see, is this a match and is this not, and then think about the different ways. And people can oftentimes get into a cycle where they try to take everyone on, and it's okay to say no. It's actually oftentimes better for your business to turn away business that it's going to be a bad fit.
Great. Anybody has anything else to add here?
That was great.
Awesome. So Joyce, actually, here's the question for you, and I would love Amelia and Connor to chime in afterwards. So can you talk a little bit about how you develop customer acquisition and competitor analysis, specifically that what are you doing to shape your strategy based on what you learn about what your competitors are doing? It's actually a very interesting topic, and I had a conversation with a marketer from Twilio. They have the entire department dedicated to competitive marketing. So I'm curious if you have anything like that within your organizations.
Yeah, I have yet to discover whether or not we do here at DocuSign. I think some of those components for competitive is built into our core product marketers roles. At Box, we had a whole department, and by whole department, I mean, 3 people, 2-3 people dedicated to competitive intelligence and just that market analysis. And I think especially for, B2B business, inbound and even outbound, it's really important to kind of have that, even if you don't have a dedicated organization. Maybe somebody that you partner with on the product marketing side, or if you're a small company and it's just you, it's really important to know what your competitors are doing, right? It not only helps with, like, for example, search tactics. So that, what are your competitors' audiences looking at out there, and what are they looking to buy, or what are they gravitating towards in terms of keywords, so that you can incorporate that into your own plan as well. But I think there is a component of it. I will be the first to acknowledge that I probably have not been as close to, keeping a pulse on the competitive side of it. Just because, like, here at DocuSign, I think, the benefit of that is just we're such a big brand name. And we know that we're one of the top 3 in the market, or top 2 in the market. So we just need to remain competitive and stay ahead. I think at Box, again, a little bit different. We focused on it, definitely, for sure. But again, just within Silicon Valley and within the major metro areas, we already had that brand recognition as well. So, again, I will guilty, probably not as focused on the competitive side as we can be. But I think it's definitely a very important piece that every, founder or individual who's working at a company and looking at growth marketing, it's just another one of those metrics you should be keeping a pulse on.
Great. Amelia, maybe any examples, not necessarily from SaaStr, but if you have them, please.
I have a perfect B2C one that obviously they keep crazy tabs on their competition. I have never seen people get so intense about keeping, like, up to date on what their competitors are doing than B2C companies. It's really insane. But we had, of course, I had, like, so many dashboards dedicated to our competitors back when I worked in B2C. But I will say it's easy to get caught up in it, but it can also give you the edge if you know what you're looking for. So if, I was at a health wellness makeup cosmetics brand, whatever, and we were just looking at how our direct competitors were positioning themselves in the business. And we were like, okay, like everyone's sort of doing XYZ. We actually took that info and used it to say, okay, if everyone else is doing this, what's one thing that no one's even talking about, no one's even doing, that we could bring to our customer base and use it as our competitive advantage? So we ended up, and not that everyone should go and do this, but we ended up building our own like proprietary technology tool so that our customers were empowered to share their testimonials on social media a lot easier than our competitors were. Like, we made it just a no-brainer, literally like 2 clicks. We built this thing that was like 2 clicks for people to use and share their thoughts, their photos, their feelings on the product. And it turned into something that no one else, like, people then copied us. Like, we broke away from the competition by just like shifting the conversation almost. It was like, okay, everyone's talking about this, but what's one thing we can do for our customers? And just, if you find that and identify it and you're able to bring it to market before everyone else, then the competition doesn't even matter anymore. Like, some of these brands that they compete with still haven't built out this kind of tool or product. And that's why this company has now sort of broken away from their competitors.
I love that you mentioned testimonials.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that moving on to Connor, and he's focusing very closely on outbound lead generation and messaging and positioning. So as a marketers, all of us as a marketers, we want to make it very easy for our customers to share feedback. So I was wondering, from your perspective, Connor, you work with so many companies here in Silicon Valley. Have you seen any of the successful case studies where when testimonials or customer testimonials, the way they were featured, they drove a significant growth, whether it comes to lead generation, user acquisition, driving revenue?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's so from our perspective at HipLead, a lot of our clients, one of the things that the testimonials can do a lot of different things. And I think when you're running a cold email campaign or people aren't as familiar with your solution necessarily, testimonials give you a reason to even open the door. We can say, okay, well, if this company works with you, then maybe I should, I'll at least open my ear and listen to you a little bit. I think that's the first thing that testimonials do, especially from the big famous clients, the big logo clients. I think another great thing that testimonials do, when you're further down the sales funnel, further down the marketing funnel, is that it can allow people to, in a way, segment themselves. So you can see, like, okay, well, if this type of company uses this solution, especially if your solution's complex, if this type of company uses it, then I can use it in this way. And if it's a complex sale, it can sometimes be hard initially to tell them that exactly what it does. And so looking at an endpoint where someone else has gone makes it easier to figure out how you can get there. But specifically, for ourselves, we always focus on testimonials that are about that are always about driving, sort of proving like real value, and it's something that that can be hard to do. But we always say, like, I like to say that a testimonial, that has like a specific, for this person in this role, this solution did this for me, always tends to be much more usable than a general broad statement like, I love working with HipLead. And it's just much more actionable.
I like that you mentioned real value. I don't remember who brought up this example. I just recently heard that people would buy more likely from a product that has 4-star review than just pure 5 or 4.5, because it actually shows that it's not just friends and family, right? And it's people giving them feedback, and they probably would take it to improve the product. That's what all of us should be doing. Which I'm curious, if how are you using Net Promoter Score within your organization? Do you have any systems designed around it? I know it's very prominent among B2B brands. Joyce, do you have a program related to it, or maybe?
I think we do have one, but we haven't really been looking at it right now. Again, just with the formulation and, the thinking now, the company focused a little bit more on the customer rather than the acquisition side. I know, when we were working at Box, that was something that we would look at a lot. And, we would make sure that we were tracking through a lot of the review sites, any of those Gartner testimonials that were coming through. And also just figuring out a way that we could capture that in Salesforce, which is the CRM that our sales teams were using, to help them, figure out who to go after and who to follow up with and who to target, or, who to pay a little bit more attention to, so that we could up their adoption or, keep them from churning. But, I think it's something that most of the companies that I've been at, we've looked at it, but I don't think we've ever really made a big concerted effort for the business as a whole to really look at it and rally behind it and say, what can we do across our different organizations to make sure that we're looking at the score and making sure that our customers are happy, or making sure that we're promoting this in a way where it's also going to help our prospects understand the real value of our products.
Yeah, we sort of tackle this problem head on here at SaaStr. It's one of our top 3 company goals, is having a high NPS score, both from like the attendee side for our community events, and then on the sponsorship and speaker side as well, because we want to make sure, obviously, that at the end of the day, this is an event that people enjoy and find valuable and find very tactical and want to come back to. Because, Vasile, like you mentioned earlier, if your sponsors don't come back after the first time, that's sort of a huge problem. And if you have high NPS and make it one of your top 3 company goals, after that, you should, in theory, have an easier time retaining customers, having an easier time upselling them whenever you have a new product launch, and just increases more of that positive word of mouth. So I think it's something that people often, overlook. Like Joyce just said, DocuSign is huge, and NPS is super important. And it's hard, to get everyone to rally behind this thing that's just so almost fickle. Like, you have to get the timing of when you ask people for NPS right too. So it's very tricky.
And what do you think is the right time?
Great question. I think it depends on a lot of factors. So obviously, it depends how long your sales cycles are. It depends on how long your contracts are. So there's a number of factors that can work differently depending on your business model. But I think it's, experiment with it. You can find out what the right time is after you've asked people a few times. And people kind of expect startups to fumble a little in the early days. You're small, you're growing. Of course, you're going to miss the mark a couple times. But then if you just test early on, then you can get it right for the long run.
Great. All right, switching gears a little bit. And this question came up early in the discussion. I would love to toss it up to you, Connor, first. Lead generation within the organization, who should own it? Marketing or sales, or both?
Well, that's an explosive question, Vasile. I think oftentimes there's a shift happening right now with where sales is tending on B2B teams to take over a lot more of the lead gen role. I think there's generally a shift in SaaS in general around sales taking a more active role, and it started in the last 6 or 7 years. But I think really at the end of the day, it's happening because I think in some ways in the past, marketing and sales oftentimes had a disconnect, and there were 2 separate silos traditionally. And now I think it's happening as more of a hybrid role. Everyone's sort of, and the great thing about growth marketing is that you're positioned in a way a lot closer to the right in the middle between these 2 different silos, and everybody is sort of focused on metrics that are really pushing the organization forward. So there's less discussion around marketing qualified leads these days, and more about how much revenue is being driven in this segment, how much reoccurring, and that puts everyone on the same page. So I think I think, outbound is definitely outbound lead generation. Kind of hunting is still absolutely owned by the sales team. Bigger teams, marketers, demand gen marketers, and growth marketers can sort of help that engine run better. Lay out the ICPs, make the actual purchases, and things like that. When it comes to inbound, it's still very much marketers' world. And that I don't think that will ever change. Yeah.
Great. I think Joyce, I think your camera is off, so might help. Can you hear us right now?
I can.
Okay, so you might want to refresh your screen, but regardless, we actually can hear you, so it's fine. So I'm curious to know what is your position on aligning overall marketing and sales. I know that at DocuSign, you focused quite heavily on sales enablement programs, and you're working with content marketing team as well. So can you talk about your position on aligning marketing and sales and how you're specifically doing within your organization?
Yeah. So, it's a crucial part of my daily life. So much of our targets and goals are aligned to, revenues and bookings for sales as well. So, I think on a daily basis, a lot of what I do, I think about, how does this directly impact sales? And for me, because I'm focused on at least the inbound motion right now, I am mostly tied to our SDR team that we've got. And so just working with them, building, a good relationship, having a steady cadence so we can talk about, forecasting, what are things looking like on their end, what's working from a program's perspective, what's not, output, quality of the leads that are coming through, what are the types of leads that they're following up on. I think those are half of the funnel picture. And then a lot of the other piece of it is really just trying to educate and enable them and help them understand that, especially for our company, as we move away from just looking and feeding our SDR trials and, contact us or inbound chats. But now we're looking to other opportunities like webinars or some physical events, right? Incorporating a lot of those different programs into the inbound process. It's helping them understand too that, while trials are really successful and probably the lowest hanging fruit for them, how do they think about these different types of buyers that are coming in now and change their conversations a little bit and adapt so that they're better equipped to handle those conversations. Whereas traditionally, they were just used to somebody saying, hey, I'm here and I'm ready to buy something. Whereas now it may be, hey, I'm almost there, but I'd love to get a demo. Like, can you just walk me through what it's about? And then, let me make my own decisions again. And so I think that's the other half of, my role. And I think, again, the importance between aligning for sales and marketing. And, my team is only responsible right now for the SDRs, but as we start engaging with a lot more of the outbound reps as well, it's now, okay, what do we do, for these particular tactics or activities, and how do we talk about them, and how do we talk about these audiences? So, all that being said, it also is very cross-functional and takes the support of multiple people within the team. So the way that I look at it is like I work with our sales team and I'm their counterpart, and I will work with them on the numbers basis and make sure that from a funnel and pipeline perspective, we're aligned there, and also orchestration of programs and tactics. But then it's also bringing product marketing into it and helping them understand that, like, okay, all this content that we're producing or enablement assets that we're producing, is this effective for the sales teams? And then is this effective for the customers or prospects that they're talking to? And just always making sure that there's a feedback loop there, just because of the different parties that are involved.
Love it. No, this is great. And I think it also something that relates to our conversation, aligning marketing and sales in general and product. I would love to talk a little bit about metrics overall and KPIs. So if you're comfortable sharing, I'm curious to hear maybe specifically either if your organization, if it's a smaller one, or maybe your specific team, what are your metrics right now, and whether that metric is the same metric that sales team has and product team has, or maybe there's one common metric that all of them have within the organization, or the metrics are completely different. Amelia, do you want to take this first?
Yeah, sure. So we have a very clear marketing KPI, which, since we're an event and community, it's getting as many people as possible to our event. And then on the sales side, of course, it's getting as many sponsorships as possible. And then we have a joint goal, right? So it's like we each have our own revenue number, and then we have a joint goal that we're both trying to get to as fast as we can. And I think when it comes to KPI alignment, just to build upon what Joyce and Connor were talking about earlier with, sales and marketing alignment and lead routing and whatnot, I think it's important to sort of think about your funnel in a way that makes sense for you. I think a lot of people follow a traditional funnel, and that's fine and dandy if that works for your business. Something we implemented here at SaaStr is this thing called an HQL. So it's a high quality lead versus an MQL. So it sort of sits in the middle of someone's come in, they're an MQL because they downloaded an ebook, but did they take an extra step? Did they contact you? Are they looking at your website? Are they actively like in your intercom or chat on your website or whatever? Are they taking actions? Basically, they're doing, not only are they interested, but they're also raising their hand. So this was like a brand new stage that I implemented with our sales team here over the summer. And we've actually seen some closed deals from these HQLs convert a lot faster because sales now is empowered, right, to go after these people. And they know exactly, okay, like if I have a big MQL list and a small sales team, they can't attack every single person. So this gives them more of a priority order list of who to go after, who's a warm lead, and we've seen it convert a lot better.
Makes sense. Connor, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, so I can share a little bit of interesting kind of data from some of our clients in an anonymized sort of way. And so, one of the key things that we like to concentrate with our clients and on the cold outbound side of things is obviously interested responses. So you look at, the chain, from if you're talking about cold email and in general, you sort of have compressed the entire marketing process into one set of engagement. So instead of like landing a homepage, clicking on things, talking about your intent, and then going through, and you basically kind of reduce that entire process down to a really short engagement. And so there's going to be folks that we like to think about it as sort of hand raises, interested responses, neutral. So folks that the concept resonates with them, but maybe it isn't the right time. And then then sort of reach out at a later time, and then negative. So people are saying like, or really like, I'm not interested. It's not a fit for me. And then going up the funnel from there, that's the initial email step. We kind of break down all responses into those categories. And then going up from there, once they've responded with interest, obviously there's meeting metrics. Was a meeting actually set? Do they show up for the meeting? And then of course there's close rates and all of that. And one of the things we recently did is that we've kind of insisted on pulling in meeting rates and close rates from all of our clients as part of our engagement, and we didn't always do that necessarily. And it's really changed dramatically how performance on certain campaigns work, because at the end of the day, if you can look at segments that are converting at a much higher rate, and that'll dramatically change converting to a purchase at a much higher rate, and you'll notice things that were a lot different than obviously if you're looking at a number of meetings booked. And so really half the battle is understanding, of course, which KPI to look at. But it's always good to take an analysis from one thing if you have the data. Like, all right, let's look at if we did apply this, what would this look like? And if we just applied here, what would this look like? And so anyway, I think the biggest thing you can possibly do is to roll everything up at every single stage along the process. And if you have enough data and time, actually dig in and really analyze it, because you'll return dividends. So
great. Joyce, do you want to talk a little bit about KPIs and how do you think about them within DocuSign?
Sure. So similar to what Amelia and Connor said, we have a specific set of metrics that we're looking at too. Right. So we'll look at responses, which are usually just the hand raisers, like people who said, "Hi, I'm here. I'm happy to join your database." And then we've got like our MQLs, who are marketing qualified leads. So these are the ones that have hit some sort of threshold within our database and met our lead score to let us know that, okay, they might be ready for a conversation with sales. And then we look at our SAL, which is our sales accepted leads. So these are the ones where our, either our SDRs have said, okay, we're willing to have a conversation with them, or one of our AEs, account executives, have said, we're willing to have a conversation. And then, there's a couple of other metrics in between, but then right after that, it's usually just the SQO, which is the sales qualified opportunity. And that's where we've identified an opportunity, and it's usually where sales has designated, some sort of pipeline opportunity, like dollar amount. For us, our marketing team is measured on SQO. So when we have these quarterly, actually weekly conversations with our sales counterparts, it's always, what is the inbound programs doing to help us get closer to our SQO numbers? What's really interesting for us, and for some of the other companies that I've been at, is there's always a healthy debate around what is the important metrics for marketing and then also for sales, right? I've been in places where sales is like, no, it doesn't end at SQO. Like, you should be looking at the closed won, and you should be looking at the revenue that comes through. And we're like, no, I think that's something that we work with you guys on. But for marketing purposes, like, we can put a stake in the ground in terms of where we get to an opportunity stage. And then from opportunity, it's up to you guys to carry it through. And so, there's been a lot of healthy conversations around that. But I think if you understand what your KPIs are up front, and like Connor said, you're measuring them throughout, as it gets a little bit more complex and as you get into conversations like that with sales, a lot of it just becomes more of a debate around, okay, we can look at SQLs, but also, there's a lot happening at the front end. And, being a B2B company, when you're selling to an entire buying team, you're not dealing with one person anymore. You're dealing with multiple people, and they're engaging across the account on multiple touch points. And so, it takes us maybe, let's say, 10 engagements from an individual before they're ready to buy from us. So, let's talk about those metrics and how we are helping, these buyers become ready and enter the sales funnel to get into an SQL. So anyways, kind of long-winded approach, but multiple ways to look at it. But I think at the end of the day, as long as you're clear in terms of what you're looking to measure and you can tell that story, there's always,